this day, there are things that happen that we are like, I don't know how to handle this. That is where that fake it till you make it comes in.
Right.
It's you have to present an air of confidence or present an air of, you know what? I'm going to think about that. I will get back to you. And then you call your friend or whatever and be like, what do I do?
What's
what
my
do I
lifeline?
do? What do I do? What's my lifeline? Because it really is so important that you don't give that message, that subliminal message that, oh no, mom and dad don't know what to do either.
Welcome to the neighborhood. It is a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Won't you be my neighbor? We are, there is something going on in our world that I think is troubling to me as a parent and also as somebody who cares about kids and about family life.
Yeah.
And for all of us, right, that there is, whether it's our kids or in the world that our kids are swimming in, the peers, there is an epidemic, a mental health crises in our world today. Right.
And especially, I think, for us being kids who grew up in the 80s, you know, like I don't remember really ever, I don't think, hearing of kids who dealt with anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, or kids, even mental health issues with kids. Like you would be like, you'd hear that and you'd be like, what are you talking about?
It's almost the opposite of childhood. Like it's just this free idea of childhood.
What's the opposite of childhood?
Well, like I think of like the mental health crises or anxiety almost feels like that's, it would have been something that would have been seen more for like a stressed out businessman or overworked mom or whatever the situation is. But you almost like, I think naturally, you naturally think of kids as free spirits and more carefree, and they don't have the burdens and the pressures of life.
And that's kind of not, for many kids, that is not their experience. Or maybe your kids are like that, but it's not their peers' experience. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that today. And some people may automatically look to tech. And I think that is a part of it, but it's not the only part of it. Right. And so we're going to give you 6 reasons why we see kids being so anxious today and what parents can do and how can you do something different in your home. But before we get into all that, let's just, first of all, please, if you have not done it already, take our listener survey.
Yeah.
So we will link
really
to
important.
it below in our show notes here, but we really want to hear from you. It would be great if we could have between 500 to 700 people take this survey. We're getting there. We're getting there at this point. But we really want to hear from you. And if you've taken the survey before, great. We have kind of updated it and changed things around because we're really kind of like honing into what are your biggest pain points as parents. Right. So we can begin to really kind of target our message and respond to those pain points in our downloads and our courses and of course in the podcast.
Yeah. So whether you're new to listening to the podcast or new to our work in general, or you've only have touched on it a little bit, like, oh, I don't listen that much. It would really be helpful to us because of knowing that we try to be a responsive, organization, ministry, right? We want to listen to and hear from people, but those who have been profoundly impacted or those who have just kind of on the periphery, or you've been doing it for a long, long time, or you're brand new, because every year we compare how are we doing as well as where are we going? What are the needs of today? What are the needs of parents today? And whether you're a priest, a religious as well, you're welcome to take the survey. But obviously we're our focus is moms and dads. But anybody who's listening, we'd love to hear from you.
And the second thing is we want to invite everybody who is listening to come to our public date night with Dr. Greg Bottaro from Catholic Psych. And he is a good friend and he has helped and benefited us and many people we know. So that is on November 21st. You can go to our website and RSVP for that. We added a little bonus. We will send you a very fun custom cocktail recipe and a spirit-free version as well.
That's right, because I'm going for the mocktail version.
That's right. We have mocktails and cocktails. And that is an exclusive recipe that is a nice fall apple drink that you can invite another couple to come to the date night with you. Yeah. And maybe have drinks together, get to know somebody else, and get some great insights from Dr. Greg and be able to ask questions as well to him.
Yeah. He's a great presenter, but he's just a great human being who has a lot of insight, both as a psychologist and counselor rather. And, but just the work that he's doing and how he sees the integration of our emotional, psychological, spiritual life.
Yes.
And as both he is a married man and a father, just how that integrates to our work as moms and dads. And so if your parish wants to do it, or if you have friends that want to get together, great excuse, great way to draw people together, because we'll have people from around the country and around the world.
Oh, I should say too, what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about mindful parenting. Mindful parenting. How do we control our emotions, be present to our children, not pass on our own woundedness to our kids? I know that's a great, the formation of children is something that is a lot of our wonderful parents who listen to us are concerned about. And Dr. Greg is going to give us some great insights to that.
And a lot of hope and encouragement, as well as some tools, I believe, to really work through that.
And the tools. See, that's the thing, is that it's the hope and encouragement, but also here's some things you can do.
Yeah, we try to keep it super practical. And it's a great, anyway, but date nights, always good excuse to fill yourself up. We'll have some conversations for you and your spouse, let alone if you have some other couples together. It'd be a great way to build some community. All right, so messyfamilyproject.org to sign up and get more information and encourage others to join you. And then you can get the free signature Messy Family cocktail. All right. So
take the survey.
And take the survey. All right. So we're talking about the challenges of kids who are anxious, right? So why are kids anxious? Why are they today in ways that they weren't necessarily in days gone by?
Now,
we don't want to deal necessarily with problems that were ancient, because there are some problems that are just human, that are always perennial.
Right.
But there is a particular time and space that we're in right now. We've got to make sure that we are aware of what the water. That's what I can just think about. The water that the culture that our kids are swimming in.
Absolutely.
If it's not influencing us and them as well, because the next generation of parents have been influenced by the world and the culture that they swim in, and we've got to just be cognizant of it. And we want to focus in on why are those kids anxious. So why don't we start off?
So the one thing I do want to say is that these 6 reasons that we believe kids are anxious are from our own experience, from our own observations of the families that we've seen, as well as The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, which I know lots of people have referred to, which we've benefited from as well. But it's both of those things.
Yeah, and he's got some great insight. He's not necessarily, I don't think, Christian or whatever. There might be things we don't, but there's some great insight as he did a really great social science research. Although this isn't wholly based on that, it does have some reference and some truths that we've drawn out from his research.
Number 1, why kids are anxious is they are too busy. We have covered this on other podcasts.
So true.
And when I say too busy, I mean that children need unstructured time without adults giving direction, looking over their shoulder, supervising them in any way.
Right. More free-range parenting.
I don't mean just like 10-year-olds. I mean like 2-year-olds.
Yeah.
2-year-olds need unstructured, unsupervised. Maybe mom's in the next room. Maybe they're outside playing. Mom's watching from outside the window or whatever.
Yep.
They need that. So what I'm seeing is that between school, number 1, activities, social media that's distracting kids, that kids are looking at a screen, and even expectations. This is especially becomes true in, I think, junior high and high school, where the expectations of what kids should be doing get really high. And now, to be clear, and like I said, we've covered this before, there is a appropriate amount of stress that kids should be under, right? Kids do need to be challenged in certain ways, but we as parents need to be very, very careful in how they are being stressed.
Yeah.
Is that stress making them stronger?
Yep.
Or is that stress making them anxious? And that differs depending on the age of the child and their developmental plane.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the antidote to all that, right? It may sound simple, but it's slowing down our life, right? Because when
simple, but not easy.
Simple, but not easy, right? And we get probably the most often asked question of us as we're traveling: how do you make time for this? Now, that in general, that's the parents talking about stuff, but they're usually looking at the schedule of the kids and like, well, they've got dance lessons here. They've got, a sporting activity over here. They've got to do homework here. Oh, and I've got a special tutoring. And then they have this special, and their kids' lives, which makes parents' lives also more stressful, right? Meaning because the parents are shuttling them all over the place. But thinking about your kid, you need to recognize that it is they are meant to flourish with space, with freedom, with peace, with slowing that down, right? So, because we need to, particularly when they're young, it's true all the times, but they need to know that they are good just for who they are.
Right.
Go ahead. They need to know that they are delighted in by their parents. They need to know that it's before I'm out and I'm an academic performer, I am a music performer, I am an athlete, whatever all those good things that we do. It's first about their identity as an individual. And you know that by them having some freedom within their time, you having that freedom. So you're not shuttling and rushing everywhere, because we've talked about many times how we can make our kids anxious simply by rushing and moving. And if where they're doing it by mom and dad's schedule is busy, but we need to make sure the kids' activities are in such a way that they're breathing life. And life comes from saying, hey, we're going to say no, having good boundaries to say no to some of the things so that we can have freedom and space in their lives just to be a kid.
So one of the things I want to challenge you to ask yourself, if you look at your child's schedule and what they're doing, and even looking at your schedule, is ask yourself why.
Yeah.
Why did I take this part-time job? Why do we have a tutor for this child? Why do we have them in dance? Ask yourself those questions, because I think when parents ask themselves those questions, the answer should always be for the full flourishing of me, for the full flourishing of my child.
That's right.
Not to get more money, not so they can get into a great college, not so they can be an academic success. I'm sorry. Those are not good reasons. Guess what?
They're not good enough, right?
They're not good enough. All right, I will be honest with you. We have children who are BC students. BC students. And you know what? We have made the decision. I'm fine with that.
I'm okay with that.
For some of my kids, B's and C's are not acceptable.
Because
they're capable of more.
They can play at a higher level.
They can play at a higher level. For some of our kids, I'm like, hey, good job. You got all B's and that's awesome. Fabulous. Could we say, you know what? No, you need to get all A's. We're getting you a tutor. This is, blah, 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 blah. Sure, I could do that. But I look at that and I say, it's not worth it, because that would stress that student, that is that child, right? Telling them this is what you are worth. And at the end of the day, to be quite honest with you, I don't really think it matters. I really don't. I've known a lot of really, really successful people that struggled in school, and they got through, and there's more than just academics. That's just one example. But then you also look at all of the other activities. Why do you have them in travel soccer? Why are they doing this? And some of our kids, we've talked about this before, we're very pro sports, very pro athletics, that's right? Our son's in football, our freshman's in football. Jimmy just graduated. He did football. Love it. Right. Love it so much. Why are they in that? For their full flourishing. I really believe, like our son right now who's in football, he needs that.
Yeah, it's good for him
to fully flourish.
And we're meant to do, like, particularly for boys, I'll say, again, we've talked about this before, so I don't want to belabor the point, but particularly team sports, physical activities that challenge and make them grow, that helps them grow into who they were meant to be.
Right.
But if it's adding, like we've had plenty of kids who've played soccer or done wrestling or volleyball, all these different sports, right? If they're contributing to them growing and understanding who they are, if they're developing and being challenged outside of their comfort zone, if they're learning discipline and all these things, great. But if it's, and this is where it's not a one size fits all. We can't tell you, boom, you just never do travel soccer. Right. We're not saying that. Although we would say when you enter into the travel space where that's your, is it detracting from all these other things in your family culture? Particularly in this episode talking about, is it just adding more stuff to your kids so that they get the false notion that I am only worthy or I am only appreciated, loved, respected when I'm doing well, when I'm performing at a high level.
Right. And that's why you need to ask yourself that question, why? Even if you are working too much, why?
That's right.
You need more money? Why? Like, ask yourself those why. We're not going to give you the answer. That's not what we do. But it's a very good question to ask. Okay.
Can I give you number 2?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So lack of sleep. So this is, again, why are kids anxious? Lack of sleep and nutrition. We are a body soul composite, right? And there are so many things. Like I'm amazed, like when I was a kid, we'd never know where I'd get those scratches from but then pretty quickly those scratches just disappeared. I was like Wolverine, I had this superpower. But what's important I think the most important thing is sleep. Your brain needs to have good, uninterrupted REM sleep to really repair. It restores you. It helps you in so many ways.
There's parents of young children out there going like, tell me about it. I can't even function right now.
I don't know how we survived. I don't know how we survived at times, right?
We still wake up in the middle of the night. We don't have babies
our kids
anymore.
Have ruined us.
I know. Anyway, sorry,
but
go ahead.
Sleep is so important.
Sleep is important for kids.
Particularly for kids, right?
And parents,
skip parents for the moment, right? That's another podcast altogether.
Right.
But for your kids, there's physical growth that really needs to happen because there is repair that happens.
Yeah.
But there's also memory that you lose your ability to have good memory, and then your brain in a certain way it needs to do. My kids are like, Dad, why isn't this working? Our Roku, trying to watch stream, and I'm like, look, this is the rule for all devices. You've got to do they call it power cycling. It means unplug it, okay? And I said, just let it sit unplugged and then start back up, and it kind of resets. As human beings, God gave us a reset every day.
Yeah. Take
sleep. It is so important. And I'm just going to dive into this, and you can maybe touch on nutrition more, but like when our kids are going to sleep, and this is where I think Jonathan talks about this quite a bit, is when they're going to bed with screens, it's killing good sleep from them. It's sucking away their time. One, they're staying up later. Two, the blue light is getting their mind working, and they're not able to be at peace and recollected to themselves, recollecting themselves. And
to begin to process emotions and all of that.
It's so dangerous physiologically, but also psychologically.
Now, one thing I do want to tell parents that I discovered, doing research for this podcast a couple years ago, I discovered this and it made so much sense to me. The changes in the release of melatonin in adolescence. Okay.
Oh, right.
So you may be wondering, well, I know my child needs sleep, but they stay up so late. They're like night owls now. But still, those teenagers still need 10 hours of sleep, 9 to 10 hours of sleep, especially between the ages of 12 and up when their body's getting ready for adolescence and going through all those changes. Well, why do they stay up so late? Little babies have their circadian rhythm, which is the rhythm of our bodies that's connected to the sun, right? Their circadian rhythm is connected to the sun, and the melatonin is released when the sun goes down. Sun goes down, melatonin is released. Little kids, they are ready to go to bed earlier, okay? That's not true for us, for adults. Our melatonin is not connected to the sun, right?
Why?
Because it gets deconnected at some point in our lives.
Right.
When does that happen? During adolescence.
Crazy.
During adolescence, melatonin is no longer connected to the rhythm of the sun. And so that's why during that period of transition, those kids still need 9 to 10 hours of sleep. But all of a sudden,
they don't have the same motivation.
They don't have that same melatonin release because their body is readjusting. And so they really should be going to sleep at 9 o'clock. And our teens, all of our teens, we are kid number 9 and 10 are teenagers right now. And we're hearing the same thing from them that we heard from kid number 1 and 2. 9 o'clock, we'll say, go to bed. And they say, I can't fall asleep. I can't fall asleep. So that's because their body is adjusting. So during that time, we usually give them melatonin. So that's, you give them melatonin, and they go through like a year or two where they have to take it almost every other night to help them go to sleep. And then they kind of like readjust, and then they're fine. Yeah. But just recognize that period of adjustment does have to happen. The no screens before bed, reading before bed, winding down, all of those things are really important, because they really, especially if your kid is waking up at 6 o'clock to go to school, they really need to be in their bed, no screen, by 9 or 10. And I really think a lack of sleep and lack of eating well too. We make sure, the only time I can make sure my kids eat well is at family dinner. When we have dinner together, because outside of that, they're making their own food, they're grabbing stuff, but we really do have to be aware of what is in our cabinet. What kind of food do our kids have? Right. What is available? What do our kids have access to? Because if they're eating 3 nights a week at school and they're picking up stuff from the snack bar or whatever, because they're staying after school for this or that, the other thing, we really have to be aware of that. Because when our bodies are stressed, our psyche gets stressed. And we can kind of forget that with our teens sometimes, especially when their bodies are growing and changing so quickly. Good sleep, good nutrition. Yeah.
It's simple, but it's important. And this is where, again, and this is where the home establishes that for our kids.
Yes.
And you'll see your kids will gravitate toward this. There will be those moments of transition, ages and so forth. I know some kids that never used melatonin, and you only used it sparingly, or whatever it might be. It's that you need to, as a parent, be aware of this, that they need to be cognizant of their time. We just did a podcast on this third point. Was that a couple ago, right? Yeah. So why are kids anxious? Rule number or item number 3, because parents need to lead. Yeah. Meaning that the people are anxious, or kids are anxious when their parents don't lead them. They aren't leading in the family, and they're allowing their kids to drive the ship, or they feel like, oh, I'm going to give all these choices.
Right.
It's like, whoa, slow down. Yeah. You have a job. You get paid big bucks to be a parent. Okay. And you as a parent need to lead in the home.
And I think that when kids have a sense that they are, that this is a democracy and that they have a vote in the home, you may think that you are doing your child a favor by helping them feel like they have ownership of things. You're not. Your kids need to know mom and dad are in charge. There's a hard wall. We got you, Right. And no, you're not going to stay up till 11 o'clock at night. No, you're not going to be out that late on a school night. No, you're not going to watch that show. No, you're not going to eat that thing, like what we're just talking about, to applying all of those things. We need to make sure that our children know and that we're in charge. And I was thinking about this. I think that parents, because we hear from parents who are unsure of themselves.
Yeah.
And I want to be honest with you. We have been unsure of ourselves.
Absolutely. And even to this day, there are areas where...
Even to this day, there are things that happen that we are like, I don't know how to handle this. That is where that fake it till you make it comes in. Right. You have to present an air of confidence, or present an air of, you know what? I'm going to think about that. I will get back to you. And then you call your friend or whatever and be like, what do I do?
What's my lifeline?
What do I do? What's my lifeline? Because it really is so important that you don't give that message, that subliminal message that, oh no, mom and dad don't know what to do either.
Yeah.
And that's an uncomfortable place.
And again, we kind of dive into this whole topic when we talk about parents leading, right? Parents need to lead in the home, but it really comes down to the fact that if you are a leader and no one is following you, you're just out for a walk, right? But if you are somebody who, in a way, you have earned as well as facilitated their ability to be trusting and obedient and follow you, then we're in good shape. Because a leader in the home, mom and dad, give them a sense of direction, a sense of purpose. They give them those boundaries. We talked, what was that podcast? The Banks of the River. What was that?
Yeah, that's the parents' lead. We just did that.
That was that, right? I thought it was the same one. So it's like we create that boundary that gives them a safety to say, okay, this is the direction we're flowing in as a community, as a small little society in our family. Right. But me as an individual, I know that I'm safe because authority as a parent, this is we're talking about leadership comes from authority, that gives safety. It's all about protection for your kids so that they don't have to make decisions and all these things that really are outside of their job description.
Right.
And even if we are uncomfortable or again, it's pushing us out of our comfort zone, I'd rather you as a mom or dad be pushed out of your comfort zone than you make your kids grow up too fast.
Yeah.
Allow them to be the children. Again, when you give them, in a certain sense, too much freedom, like they can just do whatever they want and they're making all the decisions and there's democracy.
Specifically in the virtual world. Yeah.
And particularly when they're younger, that's going to be a problem for them. But then if you don't give them freedom and give them mature options, right, within some boundaries still, but the more that they get into the teen years, you're giving them a greater level of freedom so that they're beginning to take ownership. You're slowly passing the reins over. And that's what gives our kids the confidence that they need. But when you don't do that, when you're not leading, it creates a deep sense of anxiety in our children.
Okay. And number 4 is, and you may think this is related, but I'm kind of taking it in a slightly different way, is no boundaries.
Yeah.
And what do we mean by boundaries? I should probably say a better way of saying this is no moral framework.
Right.
So there are some families where you hear things like, well, we're going to let our kid decide their religion, or we're going to let them, decide how they want to live their life, and we're going to just support them or whatever. That is very stressful. That is very stressful because that denies the child a way of making sense of the world.
Right.
What we are telling you, you need to indoctrinate your children. Okay?
Yeah.
Indoctrinate your children with your worldview, with your philosophy. That is not a bad thing. That is a good thing. They're your kids.
Yeah. Now, if your worldview is screwed up, just figure it out first, right?
But the thing is, everybody thinks that their worldview is right. That's why it's their worldview.
Well, but
that's the whole point. Even if they are wrong, whatever, nobody ever thinks you're wrong. You don't do something because you think it's wrong.
Right.
Everybody does what they do because they think it's right. You need to indoctrinate your children with your worldview because they are your children. And don't be afraid of saying that. One of the things that we were talking about this and listening to some of Jonathan Haidt's work that I kind of recognize a big flaw in his worldview, basically is that as a more of a liberal journalist or whatever, and I was looking at one of his books that he wrote, he believes or had believed, maybe I think he's coming around now, that, you know what? Everything that came before, let's question everything.
Yeah.
These are the way that things were done. Let's question that. Let's question everything. We cannot count on anything truly being true unless we test it for ourselves. That is a bunch of crap. That is not true. That is extremely stressful because if nothing is true until I test it for myself, that's a lot of testing to do.
Yes. Well, it's idiotic and it's unproductive and it's inefficient.
Yeah.
Right. But there are certain things that we should eventually say, wait, why are we doing it this way? Of course. However, our kids need to grow up in an environment where they're not questioning everything. Right. They're not questioning their identity, their whole makeup, right? Our kids need to have some very clear boundaries. Again,
a moral framework,
a moral way to look at the world, right? So that and it's not just a lip service. It's not just an intellectual proposition. It's a way of life. It's a way of approaching the world. And again, when we talk about worldview, it's how do we see the world? You're teaching your kids to see the world you do, because you know what? The world stinks at raising kids, and the world has very different designs. The world wants to turn your kids into mere consumers, or mere producers, or mere whatever you want to call. And you look at your child in a way that no government, no business, no entity will ever be able to look at your child. And you say, you are good. You are not just good. You are a beloved child. You are capable of good. You have agency. You have freedom. that ought to be a part of every good worldview, that you look at your child and you're able to pass that on in such a way that then they can look at the world through your eyes. And if you don't spend time thinking about that, how you're going to be intentional about passing that on, then you're not giving them boundaries to live within that say, this is the path of life.
And this is the thing that is so beautiful about being Catholic, because we have you should be living your life, seeing everything in your life, your work, current events, how you relate to your neighbors, all of that. You see the world through that lens of that Catholic worldview. That's what you need to be teaching to your child. That is what will reduce anxiety for them. That is what will help them make sense as they are learning about the world around them. Why do we believe that, why is this happening? Why is this thing so wrong? Why do people not always live up to our expectations? Why is there poverty? We have a way. We can go to our mother church and we can find out reasons for these things and communicate them to our children.
Yeah.
To just be like, to the answer to moral questions, if the answer to a moral question is, I don't know, we just do it that way, that's not sufficient.
Yeah.
That's not helpful. And it's okay if you don't know, but there is an answer. And we can get that answer through so many great resources and Catholic and blah, 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 all of that. Get it, find it, explain it to your child, indoctrinate them.
I like it. I'm just going to add one thing, because I think you just to kind of almost rephrase or restate what you just said. But like when our kids are raised in a free, liberal, secular environment, and they're just like, oh, whatever you want, whatever democracy, they're untethered from their parents' worldview. And then when parents are parenting their kids untethered from a larger worldview, AKA the Catholic Church, we are untethered and unmoored, and we're floating around, and we have no answers for everything. The Catholic Church doesn't respond to every single situation. That gives you a lot of freedom for a good prudential judgment on your part. Of course, right? There's a lot of things that we still need to decide, but when we attach ourselves to the vine, right? When we're fully grafted onto the Catholic Church, right? That we're part of this. We have a lifeline for our kids. And when we're part of a community, right? Just we're part of a tribe that we can look to for answers and solutions, and people who've gone before us, older than us, maybe, who are still alive, but also the ancients that we can reach into. And so that our kids then grow up in a place where they are tethered to mom and dad, but they're tethered to a story that's bigger than just them.
Exactly.
Right? That's what we're talking about. When we say indoctrinate, it's because we don't want our kids to be floating along. Not that they're going to have trite, sound bites to respond. They're going to have some depth. They're going to have meaning. They're going to have purpose behind all of that. And that's what your worldview provides for them. That's when being attached to the Catholic Church, that's when your child being attached to you being attached to church. It's like, this is how we're meant to live. This is the time for us to really share that. And that really creates a deep sense of purpose in our parenting, and it creates less anxiety for our kids.
So number 5, a reason that we believe kids are anxious: there are unrealistic expectations of their own success. Right. And I think this does come, again, from the social media, digital age culture. To kids today, one of the top things, like, and I'm not saying for our listeners' kids necessarily, but for kids like who have been surveyed. Again,
throughout this
generation is becoming famous.
Yeah.
It's not doing the right thing. It's not,
doing something big
home,
or whatever, even necessarily, unless it comes attached to being famous.
Exactly. So the whole idea of like going viral is, for many kids, that would be like their dream. That's what they would want to do. If they're on social media, that's what they want. They want to post something, to have a video, to do something that makes them that makes them famous, that gets them in front.
Stands out in a way. They're driven towards the likes and clicks and everything, right?
Right.
And that's translating in a very different way. Again, just go back a couple of years, right? Mm-hmm. And when that wasn't present, when that the things that we said, like, again, on the kind of the media side, something that happened in our small town might stay in our small town.
Exactly. And something that happens at your school would stay in your school.
Right.
But now that is not the case at all.
And so now they're playing to a larger audience.
Right. And also, being popular means more than just being popular within your group of friends, within your school, or even at most within your town. Now it's being popular on a much, much wider scale. And there's something that's really scary about that. Like, kids' psyche was not meant to be able to handle that kind of popularity. Like, you and I, not that we're so popular, but like when we meet people and people say, oh, I feel like I know you. Like, people always say, does that bother you? I'm like, it doesn't bother me at all, because I'm comfortable with what we're doing. And that's why we're here. But we are adults.
Yeah.
We are adults. My who I am is certainly not based on this podcast. Not by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
But for a child, for a developing child, especially at that extremely sensitive developmental age of adolescence, where they are learning about what is my place in the world, before that is solidified, that focus on popularity on that digital scale, it's too much.
And it becomes an overwhelm. Obviously it's unrealistic, right? Most of our kids will not be famous in the sense that they have it irrationally almost in their minds. But even for those that do become viral or go, if some post does, then they're living for that, because when you have that, there's a little bit of a dopamine hit. There's a little bit of a boost in your ego or in your perception of yourself and among your peers and your social standing. And I think there's a corollary to as you know, I spent a number of years in politics, and having seen like the boy mayor, somebody who entered into political life very early, often became, and not exclusively, but often became corrupt, because they get this power too quickly, right? And now we're not talking about the same thing, but I think it has a corrupting influence on the culture, on the generation that's out there, where they're looking for to be admired by whoever their followers might be. And people are talking about being influencers and doing all these things. Like, that's what I want to be. And it's like, there's something both somewhat unrealistic about it, but there's something that is actually kind of, it devalues, I was going to say relationships, we'll get to that later, but it really kind of moves them beyond the proper understanding of what success looks like. It takes them out of the proper bounds of what is in their sphere, because there's this great quote, again, I'm just deviating for a slight second, but I think this is all, it's one step removed from this, where the quote was St. Ignatius: the devil will use that which is far off to distract us from that which is near. And that's like, if we get caught up in things that are outside of us, well, that's really true for our kids. When our kids get caught up in a world that is outside of lived reality, it is a danger for them. It's a danger for who they are. Where do they belong? What are they looking for? How are they being built up as individuals? And social media and it's going to have new derivations in the future. All of that is going to undermine their identity and belonging in a real way. And there's many that talk about that, and that's why they want to keep kids off social media. And now Jonathan, again, a secular, not very, at least to my knowledge, is not a very Christian. He's saying your kids shouldn't be on social media until after they're 16 years of age.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's like, whoa, if he, a secular researcher, is looking at this, and there's tons of research from college age students themselves saying, was this helpful? Did this hurt me? Was it neutral? Most often they look back and say it was hurting me getting involved too quickly in social media.
Right. But I think the antidote to for parents is self-awareness and humility. One of the things that we have tried to be really honest with our kids about, because I don't believe in lying to our children, is knowing what you are good at and knowing what you're not good at, and being honest about your inadequacies and your mistakes. Because guess what? Not everybody can be good at everything.
And that's okay.
And that is okay. So having that humility and not tying my self-esteem to what I do, to how many people like me, to how much of an influencer I am, decoupling that. Well, where does self-esteem come from then? What should their expectations be? Their expectations should be grounded in who they were created to be. And hey, there are some people, maybe not kids, but there are some well-rounded adults who are on social media who are great influencers. And that's awesome. They're just stepping into what they were created to be. But kids are still discovering that.
Yes.
And they need to be first grounded and have their identity, like we were talking before, their identity and their belonging and their purpose in life really, really solid before they go into that digital world as really, honestly, somebody who is over the age of even 25 or 21. I still think even college students are probably too young to really be an influencer or have that kind of popularity. It makes me a little like
good for them
inside.
soul, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's good for them.
We're not anti-technology, as everybody knows, right? But there is this, I think it particularly in those sensitive periods, where in that kind of golden years that we often talk, that the 9 to 13 or something like that, where kids are developing their sense of identity. Again, we spend, I think it was in, can't remember the last podcast where we talked about that, but during that time, they're forming their identity in so who they are in relationship to others. And if we abandon them to the clicks and the likes and the whatever, that's what that false expectation creates a false identity for them, and it starts feeding a lie within them.
You said 9 to 12. I would say that is 9 to 12. That's like their identity right outside their family. But then 12 to 15 and even 12 to 18, that is their identity in the world.
Okay, yeah.
So that's those clicks and likes are detrimental to that.
To that whole, okay. So what would you call the first part? You know, because I guess I look at the golden years of parenting in that 9 to 12, 9 to 13.
I don't think most maybe there are some 9 to 12-year-old listeners who have their kids on social media, but it's a lot less of a temptation. After 12, getting on social media, huge temptation.
Yeah.
Huge temptation. So I think that's where they have to have the most, parents have to be the strongest to say no. And I have to tell you, our daughter, well, Mike already knows this, so I'm not telling him this, but our daughter right now, who's 17, I don't even think she posts on social media, but we just enabled her to get a social media account more recently. But the kids before her had them. Because we were less aware. Yeah. You know, we were less aware. And I don't think, but they were two boys above her too. And so that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But she wanted to be on social media before that. And I just said no.
And she was good with it, right? Because
she was.
And I look at her now.
If she wasn't, she didn't tell us. So.
Yeah. Well, and we know she wasn't, right? You know, that's the other part. And we trust her, but we also made sure, and this kind of the grounding in the real world, grounding in reality. And that's really what humility is, right? You know, teaching, like, social media is anti-humility oftentimes,
right? Exactly.
Right? And so what we want to do is give them those experiences. And I'll just make this note, you know, as somebody who believes in the virtue of humility, right? Our world needs more of this. Our modern world needs more of this. Yeah. And, but humility isn't purely debasing ourselves. It's not even focusing purely on our weaknesses. It's knowing who we are in our true self, and with our strengths, with our weaknesses, with our failings, as well as our triumphs and all of that, right? And so we've got to draw out that goodness in our kids, that they are good no matter what they do. Mm-hmm. But then there's also a layer where they ought to, as the preteen and teens, see that they are really good at some good things in this world, whether it be athletics or academics, or whether it be in the way they treat people, the way they craft or cook.
Or making cookies. Our daughter was just making cookies. So and I'm like, why are you doing this? These are so good. Here's a very big temptation. But the important thing to remember too is that humble kids become content adults.
Yes.
Okay. So if you want your kid to be a content, confident, non-anxious adult, or even a non-anxious kid now, teach them humility now. Teach them humility so they can really know themselves and be grounded. And then when they make a mistake, of course, kids always get embarrassed on different things. All of us, that happens to all of us. But for a teen or whatever, embarrassment or public embarrassment can be really devastating. But that can be mitigated by the fact that they have humility and they know who they are.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
That's
you know,
right.
it's okay because stuff happens.
All right. So number 6 on
one.
our list is why are kids more anxious in this generation? A lack of authentic relationships. When mom and dad are too busy, too distracted, too diffused, and they don't have time, or when we do have time, I don't have my phone with me, but that we're on our phones, or we ourselves are distracted. It doesn't mean purely technology, or they as kids, who they're seeing is online. And they don't have tangible, authentic relationships in the real world because all of these things, whether they're the friends online, whether it be the lack of attention and attuneness from parents or other people in their lives, it's sending them a message that you're not that important.
Yeah.
Because our most valuable commodity as parents and as human beings is our time. That's the one thing that we have a limited amount that we can't go back to the bank and get more of. I've tried it. It doesn't work. It's not available. And so I think that we need to make sure we're aware of what messages we are sending our kids. And then when we are not aware that their relationships are primarily online, like I'm thinking of 2 individuals who I knew that was one of their primary relationships or pool of relationships, right? People in our orbit. And I remember, at least for one of them, was interested in growing in his life. And I said, you've got to develop real world relationships. Right. It's fine that you're gaming and talking to people and whatever, that fine.
That's not your social life.
Make sure that is the smallest part of your relationship bank.
Right.
That you're building up with people who see you every day, who talk to you, who are tangible. Again, we've talked about this in other parts of this episode, but we're a body-soul composite. We are meant to be in relationship. We are meant for communion. And again, not that we FaceTime, we do Zoom meetings. Of course, those are fine. But you need tangible, real-world friends, particularly for your kids. Because every time that they're, again, we're not just beating up on technology, but there is an experience block. It's a interaction block when your kids are investing more in online activities than they are in real world relationships.
Just 2 quotes that I put in here from Jonathan Haidt. So first of all, synchronous face-to-face physical interactions and rituals are deep, ancient, and underappreciated part of human evolution.
Yeah.
And it's so weird that we actually have to say that.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, that wasn't even an option 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like maybe you would talk to people on the phone, but obviously you would talk to people on the phone, but you were talking to someone on the phone who you knew in real life.
Yeah.
You had a relationship with, you were just continuing your conversation. But just to recognize that synchronous face-to-face physical interaction.
Synchronous,
this is
meaning
at the same time. Yeah, that we are seeing each other at the same time and talking, and it's physical. And also, people don't get depressed when they face threats collectively. They get depressed when they feel isolated, lonely, or useless. Yeah. There is less depression in war-torn countries than there is among kids in the United States of America. That is scary. That is scary. When you read those statistics about kids who are depressed, who are living in places that are war-torn, poverty-stricken, those kids are less depressed than kids in middle-class, upper-class America. Because those kids in America feel isolated, they feel lonely, they feel useless.
Yeah.
They feel useless.
Yeah.
And that is something that parents can do something about. Like we have to recognize that yes, you cannot choose your kid's friends, but you can put your kid into social situations that they can meet people who share their values. I was on an exercise class once, and I was talking with this one lady whose son I knew when he was like in kindergarten or something, and he was now in high school. And they had a similar piano teacher, I think. And I was asking how they were doing, and so, that piano teacher, that's like his best friend. As a matter of fact, I think that's his only friend. He doesn't really go out. He doesn't really have any friends outside of that. And I was like, my gosh, my heart was like a little like, oh my gosh, that's like so sad. And I'm thinking to myself, Mom, come on. You got it. If your kid doesn't want to, if he's homeschooled or he's really smart or he can't find his place, you got to put him out there. You have to help encourage him to get involved in other things where he can make friends, or he's going to feel lonely, isolated, and useless.
Yeah. And with our world, I remember, I don't know if it was in the book, but I know, or maybe it was in an interview, but Jonathan Haidt, when he was talking about this, he talked about actually the distinctions he found was that among Christian homes versus more liberal homes. And he found that the anxiety was higher in liberal homes because they didn't have cultural traditions and rituals that brought them into contact with other human beings on a regular basis, right? And so, and it's not just about warm bodies, but it's about those rituals tie us together.
That's right.
They give us a sense of belonging, right?
This person's doing the same thing that we're doing. They believe the same things we believe.
Yeah, and there's a power that you create in your home, but your family is not meant to be alone in this. And your kids, particularly as they get in that preteen and teen years, they need other people, like you're saying. And when you put them as part of friends, but also just the larger community, your parish, your larger city
your
or town or whatever,
city.
You're connecting them to something bigger than themselves. You're getting them out of themselves. You're creating in them a desire for something that they already have a desire for. We were all made for that communion. We were all made to be in relationship.
To have connection.
And it is actually a fundamental human need. And without that being met internal, like in the real world, they might seek a fabricated and false sense of that in a online space where it's usually asynchronous, meaning not in the real time, and disembodied. Like when he talked about that idea that you're connecting with disembodied people, I thought that's bizarre, but he's right. And it's like, this could set this generation up for great manipulation when I don't know who I'm talking to right now. Is it AI? Is it a human being?
Right.
Is it, again, in the dangerous stuff of, is this a predator? Is this a peer my age? Is this a weird, all of that. But if we make sure that our kids are immersed in authentic real world life, that's what happens. And one of the easiest ways, and whether it's young or old, is one of the ways to immerse them is just in play, in good leisure, right? When they're young, you might define it as just play, but really all of us humans need leisure, need fun activities together. And that builds authentic relationships in our home. When you have other families over for game night, or, you're having somebody over for brunch or a dinner, and you're all hanging out, whether playing a game together, whether they're singing songs, whether they're just having a meal and sharing conversations. All of that is creating a rich context for your kids to understand this is what real life is about. And
so getting away from technology for a minute, even within their real world experience, I think it's really important that kids figure out authentic relationships without adults.
Yes,
the example that you gave was with adults, and I think that's really important.
That's how we facilitate it
for adults to model those good relationships.
Yes.
But as they get into the preteen and teen years, or even younger than that, to be honest with you, I feel like every kid needs to have time where they're relating with other kids without adults hovering around.
Right.
That is unsupervised by adults. Because you might be like, well, my kid is with other kids all day. Yes, they are. But are those authentic relationships? Because if they're in a classroom that their behavior is always being monitored by a teacher, if they're going to, soccer practice or whatever, where there's always like the coach around, there's never a time for them to kind of figure out what are the boundaries of relationship and make mistakes and to get into arguments and
how
get into
How
fights.
to pick up social cues and repair and reconcile.
Exactly. And also choosing your friends, going towards people, being attracted to people who are more like you or who make you feel better about yourselves. All of those kinds of things to navigate. That obviously it looks one way when they're like 5, 6, 7, but then that looks very different when they're 12, 13, and then 16, 17. Like they need to be able to be around and to kind of like stand on their own 2 feet relationship wise and learn how to relate with many different types of people.
Yeah.
and to have those authentic relationships. Because if your kids are constantly around other kids in the presence of adults, that message is sent like you cannot handle this.
You're either not trusted or you can't handle this.
Exactly. You are not enough, or you are not good enough. But kids have to be able to, like we did, again, kids in the 80s, just like running around our neighborhood, playing with the neighborhood kids, or even being able to like go to the mall by themselves. And we covered some of this in that safetyism podcast that we did that was really popular. But those are all important parts of developing authentic relationships.
That's right.
And kids are going to make mistakes, right? They're going to make mistakes. They're going to do things. Sometimes they're going to get their feelings hurt. They will hurt other people's feelings.
That's right.
It's okay.
That's how they learn, right?
That's how they learn. I remember being, I think it was like my junior year, getting into an argument, like a yelling argument with another girl, like in a classroom,
really?
Over something, and I look back on that sometime and it was actually, I was defending somebody else like at the time, but I mean, that was like a pivotal thing. I look back and I see, I could have done this differently. I could have done that differently. And I was still friends with the girl afterwards, but there's things like that happen, whether good or for bad, right. That we have to learn by.
That's right.
Like that we have to learn by, but that's only can happen when kids are free to relate to each other without the constant supervising of adults, especially as they get older.
Yeah. Okay, so those were our 6 ideas, 6 reasons why this generation is more anxious. Mm-hmm. And again, not all of them, but parts of that are drawn from the anxious generation with Jonathan.
So could I give our 6 takeaways? These are the positive things, okay?
Yes. So what do we do?
So I tried to make this like, these are the 6 things that we have them do, so like the antidotes, right?
Great.
Number 1, slow down, do less, accept your child for who they are, okay? So stop being so busy. Number 2, bedtime and eating, right? Have a consistent bedtime, eat dinner together. Number 3, parents, lead your family with confidence. Refer to the last podcast.
Yeah.
Parents lead, right? Or whatever it was. Number 4, indoctrinate your children with your philosophy.
Yeah, baby.
They are ripe for indoctrination. Number 5, teach them humility. Humble kids become content adults. And last, put your kids in healthy social environments and teach them and help them see how to enjoy true leisure.
Yeah. So if you want to have some conversation with your spouse on this topic, some questions that might start off that conversation, look at your schedule and ask yourself why. Examine each of the activities and make sure that you're intentional about it. Are we too busy? Are there things that we shouldn't be getting caught up with, right? And maybe a second, do we think our children are anxious? Observe them, be attuned to them, check in and observe them together. Why and what can we do to change that? Because we need to be aware of this because our kids are swimming in this generation. Mm-hmm. But we want to be aware and attuned to what's going on in our kids' life. Every kid's different, and there are different thresholds. And so we as parents need to accommodate each of the uniqueness of our kids and challenge them to a greatness in their own small way.
Okay, let's go ahead and pray.
All right.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, we just thank you for our children. We thank you for the challenge that they are to our own growth. We ask you to give us the grace to rise to that challenge, to love our children truly, Lord, as you love them. Help us to guide them. Help us to guide them, Lord, and bring peace to their lives, peace to their hearts. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Amen. And until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.